It may be the king of instruments, but not all organs are created equal. The instrument at the Royal Festival Hall in London has a special place in the regal pantheon of British organs, and it celebrates its 50th birthday this month. It's still a powerful and progressive organ even today, but in 1954 its radical design caused uproar in the musical community. We hear now from organist Dame Gillian Weir, Mark Venning, the present managing director of Harrison & Harrison, the organ builders who built the instrument, and the organ's curator William McVicker, who describes the view from the console in the festival hall.
Well, here we are at the console of the Royal Festival Hall. The first thing that you notice is the extent of the ivory. There are 103 speaking stops on the organ, and the keys are all solid ivory as well, and the whole thing just smacks of quality as soon as you see it. And then towering above us are all the pipes of the organ in an open plan style, and what you see here at the Festival Hall is what you get. It's quite an extraordinary animal. To put a context on the construction of this instrument at the South Bank, you have to set yourself back in time to really the Edwardian era, and moustached gentlemen sat at rather large instruments on a sort of power trip, really. Volume was everything, and really the beauty and the detail of organ sound disappeared. And so when this instrument was being constructed, the designer, Ralph Downes, a very distinguished gentleman, really something of an iconoclast, tried to put the repertoire first to build an organ which was going to serve various schools of organ music. And at that time, that was really very much out of fashion. And I think it's taken the organ building world 50 years to come to terms with this great beast.
William McVicker. Organist Dame Gillian Weir studied with Ralph Downes in the 1960s.
Ralph Downes was very much admired by and a friend of Felix Abrahamian, who was one of the people involved in planning the Royal Festival Hall as it was rising from the dust, and it was Felix who entrusted him with the project. He was a fascinating person, played an enormous amount of music. Even in his later years, he was still playing first performances and music new to him all the time. As a teacher, a student always wants complete certainty, of course. They want to know, what am I to do with this? What does that mean? And I remember trying to understand this world of ornamentation in early music. And he would say, well, stroking his chin thoughtfully, on Wednesdays I tend to do it this way, and on Thursdays I do it another. I was terribly frustrated by this.
There's a splendid quote from Ralph Downes who said, "Safety in music making is only for fools or cowards."
Mark Venning, the present-day managing director of organ builders Harrison & Harrison. It was Venning's Durham-based company, under the then leadership of Cuthbert Harrison, which so impressed Ralph Downes with its craftsmanship and attention to detail.
I think it's very clear that Cuthbert Harrison showed immense courage in taking on the Festival Hall contract. It was something completely new for the firm, blazing a completely new trail, with a consultant who, though quite experienced, was largely untried in big projects. The relationship between Cuthbert Harrison and Ralph Downes was prickly. Downes was very pernickety, difficult person, very determined to get his own way, a great thinker, and with a very clear idea of what he wanted, combined with some confusion as to the means of achieving it. Ralph Downes used to come up on the train to meet Cuthbert Harrison. They would talk far into the night. And on one occasion, there was immense discussion about various points of controversy, and at the end of the day, Cuthbert heaved a big sigh of relief as he saw Ralph Downes onto the train with all these matters resolved. Next morning, he was dismayed to receive a postcard with a Darlington postmark 20 miles down the line, rescinding most of the decisions that had been taken and putting it all back onto the drawing board again.
Despite the confusions caused by the blizzard of correspondence, the organ was finally completed in 1954 and unleashed on an unsuspecting public in the March of that year. As William McVicker, the organ's curator, says, the instrument certainly divided opinions.
Some loved it. Some felt it was the way forward and a revelation for the music of J.S. Bach, which was one of the intentions of the instrument. But some were absolutely horrified at what they described as the breaking glass sound of the instrument. Ralph Vaughan Williams railed against the organ in the Times, writing a furious letter describing the potential construction of the organ at the South Bank as mere barockery, with some of the stops sounding like medieval shawms. And this sort of sound was completely alien to the English audience. Here we go, here's a bombard stop. That to us now may just seem characterful, but I think to the English public of the 1950s, some were intoxicated by that sound. They'd never heard anything like it. But there are others who were utterly appalled at the kind of rawness of the sound and absolutely hated it. And as you look round the instrument, there are many examples of very beautiful things that would have been very uncharacteristic of the organ at the time. And so to construct a little flute which was an imitation of a Father Smith stop was, I think it just left some people scratching their heads.
He became even more withdrawn, I think, which one can't blame him for, because so much of it was unreasoning criticism. There are things at any time that one can say about something which is part of a new movement. Some people feel that it goes too far, others that it doesn't go far enough. There are various points of dissension, each of which can be valid. But things can be very hard to take when you've spent a great deal of time agonising.
Ralph Downes said that he'd never intended for the organ of the Royal Festival Hall to set a new fashion in British organ building. However, in Mark Venning's opinion, it was an important turning point.
It shed such a blazing light on the British organ scene that for the next 15 years or so, British organ building was in a state of some turmoil. I think during that period a lot of mistakes were made, but at the same time it was an immensely exciting period of development, and some wonderful results came out.
It was always intended for the Royal Festival Hall's acoustic to be dry, but from the moment the building was completed, it was realised that it was far too dry. Despite attempts to claw back some reverberation, the hall has suffered from a lack of resonance ever since. However, as William McVicker explains, this is a problem which is hopefully about to change, benefiting organists of the future as much as anybody.
Organists often say that the best stop on an organ is the acoustic of the building, and we don't have that here. And to hear 103 stops of sound flop onto the floor behind you and disappear into nothing is quite a frightening experience. For performers, it can be quite difficult because they don't get an immediate feedback from the walls in the building. So part of the acoustical plans are to increase the reverberation characteristic and the quality of the reverberation. In other words, to give it much more bass frequency and resonance. And the organ will play its part in that.
A vintage recording of Ralph Downes himself at the Royal Festival Hall organ, this month celebrating its 50th birthday. We heard the organ's curator, William McVicker, organ builder Mark Venning, and organist Dame Gillian Weir, who'll be one of the many celebrity performers playing in the anniversary recital at the Festival Hall on Tuesday, the 23rd of March.